YouTube. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is football season. We have revamped our website. We have revamped our morning newspaper. I'm hoping you're subscribing to that. We got tons of new sponsors, and off to Miami we go. And it's football season. We've done a ton of Baltimore positive around here, but I am not going to be lacking for innovative statistics and intelligent analysis. I knew this guy about 15 years ago. Now, when I go to his Twitter and stuff, he's on with like famous late-night talk show host, and he still hangs out with us around here. He's up in Massachusetts as the head of Football Outsiders at footballoutsiders.com. It's almanac season, right, Aaron Schatz? How you been, man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. We're selling that almanac, man. This is my time. This is my prime selling time for folks to get the Football Outsiders Almanac 2019. It's our big 500-page preview of the NFL and college football season. You get it in PDF form from our site, footballoutsiders.com, or you can get a paperback book from Amazon.
Well, you've been doing this maybe as long as anyone, right? Like in this sort of, look, we got Astro Ball in Baltimore now with Mike Elias, but you were one of the innovators in statistics and got to know coaches upwards of 2 decades ago. More people are doing this. More people are poring over this. But there is a part for me when I think of you as a pioneer in this area, especially on the media side.
Yeah, I think we were the first site to really publicize and really popularize doing advanced stats for football. It's all over the place now. The last couple of years, there's been just a huge explosion. And an explosion in teams hiring people. I mean, the Ravens just hired 3 people who were mostly known for the work that they put out on Twitter, of all things. But, we were really first out there in 2003, and it's really great to see all the people that have followed in our footsteps.
Well, I've known Eric DeCosta a long, long time, from the beginning, and now he's running the show. Doesn't shock me that he would want guys like you around him because he sees and feels the game in that way, and maybe that's what this Lamar thing is about.
Well, it's a really interesting dichotomy because most analytics suggest that passing is far more efficient than rushing, that teams need to be passing the ball more and running the ball less. And yet Baltimore, which has just hired, all these analytics people, is probably going to run the ball more than any other team. They have a quarterback who runs the ball more than any other quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out for them. It's a very different way of doing things than other offenses.
Can it be successful long-term? I mean, I guess that's the crystal ball everyone's looking at, and part of this would say it's never worked before, therefore, how good of an idea can it be? But, Steve Jobs didn't work that way either, right? And neither did Billy Beane.
Yeah, I still think that in the long run, passing is more efficient than running, and Lamar Jackson's going to just need to work to be a more accurate passer, and he's going to need to pass the ball more. But one of the worries is always the idea that running quarterbacks will get injured. But when you look at Lamar Jackson, he's really built like a running back. I can't imagine that his chances of getting injured are that much more than any running back that's going to be running the same kind of designed runs that he runs.
Well, and in this case for him and the improvement that needs to be there, part of that is the offense, what they've done. Last year's team was not built around him. It just had some weird success around him at the end. Now the whole thing's been built for him. But other teams see it coming, but they don't really see it coming, right? Like, the part of this that's interesting week to week is you have to literally scrap your defense and prepare a special defense for that alone. From a coaching perspective of what happens when you leave Detroit or Cleveland one week and you have Baltimore on your schedule, there's a whole way to prepare for this that is a little bit left-handed for virtually everyone, right?
I suppose, but that didn't seem to be a big problem for the Los Angeles Chargers last year. So, I mean, you're better coaches that can switch. They can switch on a dime like that. The question is, do they have the personnel, right? Teams may try to copy what the Chargers did, but do they have the personnel in their defensive backfield to copy what the Chargers did? Not everybody is as deep as the Chargers. Not everybody has Derwin James. Even the Chargers don't have Derwin James this year.
Injuries in the preseason. We're through this muck at this point, or, at the end of it. Nobody is really playing their players in the fourth game anymore. We have seen, Harbaugh run up to Philadelphia and scrimmage his buddy up there and bring it in Jacksonville to scrimmage here. the scrimmages are where it's at. The PSLs are a problem here, and getting people in the stadium. I did see some people in Philadelphia last week for the game because the people have the tickets, and that's a place they still actually use them. But the preseason and the thought of an 18-game schedule, and I know you've tackled that, Aaron, out at Football Outsiders in an interesting way, because the Players Association is this is gonna come to a head. The owners want 18 games. The fans want no preseason. The players probably want no preseason or very little preseason. The players don't want practices in the offseason to expose their players to injury. There's going to be some movement here on this, I feel. I feel like the 18-game thing is going to happen because the owners are going to pay for it to happen, quite frankly.
Right, and Zach Binney, who writes about injuries for us, had an interesting piece online on Football Outsiders last week talking about the 18-game season, that the amount of injuries, and particularly the amount of career-ending injuries, should actually be pretty low in what is added by having 2 extra games compared to the added income that players will make, assuming that all players will make, that they're going to multiply everybody's checks by an extra 12%. So he thinks that the players may actually be able to negotiate this in a way that an 18-game season is financially pretty good for them. The question is whether they want to do that, because it's more than just the career-ending injuries. It's just the wear and tear. It's just this sort of weekly wear and tear of being a football player, that just adding 2 more weeks onto it is not something that any of them want to do. But maybe you can negotiate it if you take away the preseason. The preseason, it seems like such a waste of time at this point. This fourth game of the preseason is just such a waste of time. It's basically a guide to who's going to not make the team.
Yeah, and it's really kind of been that way in the fourth game for a long, long time. But, Aaron, we go full circle here, right? Like, we started with Westminster and going and getting peach pancakes for breakfast and seeing them play on a college field to now, the experience as a fan of what July and August was and represents and what the games were, and seeing some of your players a little bit and, having them throw it around in the third game for a half, and you get an hour and a half of some real, all that's gone, like literally all of that's gone, and much of that wasn't very good. It was kind of like a warm cup of coffee that's now become a cold, stale cup of coffee. I don't know that there's any way to make it really good, but if they're going to be risking their livelihoods and playing 5 weeks of, we go back 10, 12 years, you're talking 2-a-days and all sorts of crazy stuff, right? That the 18-game thing doesn't seem so far-fetched to me. It feels like, as much as certain factions will argue against it, I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like it's inevitable.
Clearly the league is driving for it. So, they'll put a lot of pressure to make it happen. The question is just how can the players negotiate to make it better for them?
Aaron Schatz is my man at Football Outsiders. They have the almanac. You can see sort of anything that's in you will get information there you won't get anywhere else in the internet. That's true. Innovative statistics, intelligent analysis. They've been doing it longer than anyone. So what do you make of the Ravens on the whole in an off-season of, I don't want to say tumult. I wouldn't put it like that. Part of it you could count on Suggs being at the end and Weddle being at the end or near the end and the changes that were made. But the quick turnaround to a heart transplant of Earl Thomas and what Flacco represents, and I'll get to him in Denver in a minute. But as on the totality of what the team has done in the offseason, I think most people around here think this is a pretty resilient bunch around here, and there's no reason to think they can't go out and run around and win 9 or 10 or 11 games.
Well, I think this is still a playoff contender. I think 9 games is more likely than 11, but I think this is still a team that's going to be contending. Now, listen, they lost a lot of talent in defense. We measure using the approximate value measurement from Pro Football Reference, and based on the net loss and approximate value on defense, right, giving them credit for adding Earl Thomas, but all the players that they lost, this is the second biggest departure of defensive players in the last 16 years, behind the 2009 Tampa Bay Bucks.
Wow.
Now, that team dropped from 6th to 25th in our defensive ratings. I don't think this team is going to drop anything like that, partly because of the talent they still have, partly because of adding Earl Thomas, assuming, Earl Thomas is healthy and good. He's obviously a huge game changer, but it's interesting because are they going to shape their defense around what he did best at Seattle, or is he going to be doing different things? From the quotes that you've heard, it sounds more like he's fitting into their defense more than that they're fitting their defense around what he used to do. On offense, like I said, it's interesting to try to build an offense around the run when analytics show that the pass tends to be more efficient than the run, but they're going to try to pass more this year. There's no question about it. Hopefully Marquise Brown is healthy and they can pass to him. Obviously Boykin has really impressed people. Snead's still a good slot receiver. So they've got Andrews. They've got targets. It's just, can Lamar Jackson improve? And he improved in college. So the hope is that he improves in the pros too with more experience.
Football Outsiders and Aaron Schatz joining us here. He joins us a couple times a year. We get together combine time and draft time and talk about players. The Cleveland Browns are winning the Super Bowl, right? I mean, we all know that.
Yeah, we're down on them compared to everybody else. We have their defense regressing a little bit. I know that people are so impressed with their current defensive line, but what happens when the injuries start? That team does not have a lot of depth.
In the case of Baker Mayfield and maturation and where he was last year and where he would be projected to be this year, and the leadership part of this and what they're doing and OBJ and all of those moving parts, I've seen that explode like a powder keg so many times when you bring in personalities and you bring in a coach who hasn't sort of managed that before.
Well, we don't know what to expect from Kitchens as a head coach. That's absolutely true. I do think that the personality thing with OBJ is a little overrated, and you got to think that he's going to be a little more in line now that he gets to play with his best friend, Jarvis Landry. I mean, we're bullish on the Browns' offense. It's the defense that we're a little worried about regressing. They were another thing about them regressing is they were very high last year in takeaways, and that's something that tends to regress from year to year. But the offense, I mean, you can't deny the talent on that offense, except here's the problem. The offensive line has a lot of question marks. I mean, Greg Robinson at left tackle, to depend on him for a whole season is pretty questionable.
You see the left tackle play in the league, and really the John Ogdens and the Basellis, and we have Ronnie Stanley here. Left tackle is one of those positions we're always drafting for, right, and always looking for the next John Ogden or Orlando Pace. Very difficult to find in the modern era, right? And I guess maybe that's because of the schemes that they're up against, that it's not just one-on-one anymore out on the edge.
Well, also, it's just the type of blocking that they do in college is very different from the type of blocking they do in the NFL now. College has a lot of those wide splits. Guys start in two-point positions. Everything is the spread offense and those very quick passes. And I've talked to scouts in the NFL who feel like they don't really get much film on college linemen that can really translate to the NFL.
Aaron Schatz's been doing this a long, long time at Football Outsiders. They have the Almanac together for anybody that wants a different look. Go to Football Outsiders and check that out. Innovative statistics, intelligent analysis. And I've heard some not intelligent talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers being on the downside. It's like, look, I'm in Baltimore, man. I've got October 5th circled already. That weekend we're going up there to Pittsburgh playing a 1 o'clock game. The disrespect of the Steelers-Ravens is such that they're not even prime time anymore for the first time in 20 years, for crying. I remember the first time the Cowboys and the Redskins weren't on Monday Night Football. But that is a reflection upon how the networks and the league and the universe feels about the Steelers and the Ravens. And as much as we are feisty about our Ravens around here, there's signs that the end may be near in Pittsburgh, but I've heard that before. I'm not ready to buy into that.
No, we're high on Pittsburgh compared to everybody else this year. There's still a lot of talent on that team. Last year, they were a team that was good enough. The underlying statistics were good enough for them to be a playoff team. They only missed by a half a game because of that tie. Obviously, losing Antonio Brown, you can't sugarcoat that. He's their best receiver, and was a significantly strong part of that offense. But people talk about how they've lost both Bell and Brown. Well, they already lost Bell last year. Like, we've already seen what they do without Bell, and we still saw a 9-6-1 team. It's still got a strong pass rush. The pass rush was strong in both pressure rate and sack rate. Pressure rate tends to correlate more to the future than sack rate does. They have been strong for a couple of years. Things should be better in the secondary without Artie Burns toasting up the place for the first half of the year. They've got a strong offensive line with a lot of continuity, and they still have some good receivers there, especially Juju Smith-Schuster, despite the departure of not just Brown, but also the tight end Jesse James, who left. So we think that Pittsburgh is actually the favorite to win the AFC North. We think it's going to be a really good. We think it's going to be a really good three-team race. There also is apparently a team playing in Cincinnati, theoretically, but we think it's going to be a really good three-team race.
Speaking of theoretically and things that have happened here, I can't believe I'm 20 minutes into this with you, and I haven't talked about Andrew Luck because, quite frankly, I've been talking to everybody else about that on the internet from the beginning, and idiots booing in the fourth quarter and all that nonsense. But on a shock value, on a football level, and where we are, I don't know that anybody really counted on him for 16 games ever. And, this isn't the healthiest of healthy guys doing this. But for Indianapolis, it changes everything about the fortune of a program, and it certainly changed a lot of people who had drafts before last Saturday night as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was shocked. I was shocked. He played 16 games last year, but it certainly didn't look like he was prepared to play 16 games this year, and it's a drop. I mean, our projections are known for being really conservative, but even with that, we dropped the Colts from 9 wins on average to 7.2 wins on average, which dropped them from 9th to 26th in our preseason projections. That's a pretty big drop because it's a pretty big change at the most important position of the game.
Well, I mean, ideologically, they go from being a playoff team to not a playoff team in the minds of virtually anybody who's paying attention, right?
No, I mean, the most likely position is that they're not going to be in position to take one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft, but they would be in position to trade up for one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a team like Washington have a terrible year that already has its quarterback of the future, if that's an opportunity for Indianapolis next year to trade into one of those top spots to get Tagliavoa or Justin Herbert in next year's draft.
I love how you say that, a team has their quarterback of the future. That's just in August. I mean, wake me up again in January and let me know, right? Like, we've been through this with the 49ers and all sorts of teams,
Arizona,
right?
Arizona, you never know, because after Arizona, we thought they had their quarterback of the future, and then they're like, well, let's trade this in for a different quarterback of the future.
Well, you're always one trade away from this year's version of Garoppolo or whoever, is the sexy guy of choice. Look, Joe Flacco got thrown out of here like a stale bag of donuts, right? And Denver's counting on him. Aaron, what do you think of Joe Flacco at this point in his career in Denver where the defense will lead the party there?
I mean, he had the best half year of the last few years last year in that first half for Baltimore, but I just think the most likely scenario is that Flacco is a below-average quarterback, and that's just not good enough to cut it in this year. And as much as the Denver defense has talent, they've lost a lot of the talent that they previously had in the secondary. And I don't think that they really have the inside linebackers that make Vic Fangio's scheme work. And you usually take a step back when you're learning a new scheme anyway. So I'm not very high on Denver this year. I think even their defense may end up a little overrated, and the offense doesn't look like it's going to be very good at all.
Aaron Schatz is our guest. He's a Football Outsiders, and, stay in the West here. Chiefs, it's a Chiefs world, right? We go out there week 3. I'm going to have some barbecue and see this Pat Mahomes show firsthand. I did not make the trip last December. I think everyone's fully expecting them to be the bully on the block this year and this kid to step up into some level of expectations that's a little otherworldly right now. Like, anything short of 12 wins will be a bad year in Kansas City, right?
Well, you got to give a little bit of respect to the Chargers. I mean, we actually had the Chargers ahead of the Chiefs in that division until Chargers things started happening to the Chargers, like the Derwin James injury and Russell Okung's blood clot problem and Melvin Gordon's holdout. But, the Chiefs are strong. There's going to be a little regression by that offense. It can't possibly be that good another year. And the defense, we'll have to see whether they've been able to improve it. I mean, obviously, you exchange out one pass rusher for another pass rusher, changing out Dee Ford for Frank Clark. Is that an improvement? I don't know if that's that much of an improvement. Some people believe that it is. You're changing schemes there, moving to a 4-3 from previously playing a 3-4. They need some defensive improvement if they're going to make up for what's likely going to be a little regression by the offense. I mean, Kansas City's still going to be one of the best teams in the league, but I'm not expecting for them to run away with it. And I don't expect that Mahomes Mahomes is probably going to have the best stats of any quarterback, but they're not going to match what he did last year because you're just not going to throw 50 touchdowns 2 straight seasons.
We spent 3 days, it felt like 3 weeks in Philadelphia last week, waiting for a game that was a turd, that got lightninged on and the whole deal. But everyone I talk to in Philadelphia, everything I see and read and hear, I know the Rams were sexy last year, and there's some other teams that have improved themselves, and the Bears have a quarterback they think they believe in, and, where's Cam Newton and all this and Drew Brees. But it feels to me like on the roster side of depth and strength and the fact that they actually climbed the mountain and did it a year and a half ago, the Eagles feel to me to be the choice in the NFC.
Well, we have the Saints as our top seed in the NFC, our top projected team, but we have the Eagles pretty darn high. And here's the thing about the Eagles that makes them so dangerous. That team is tremendously deep on both sides of the ball at nearly every position, which means when the inevitable injuries hit, Philadelphia is better prepared than any other team in the league to take those injuries. The quarterback position is the one position where you have questions, but now with Josh McCown, they're better set at backup quarterback too. But this is a team where their first-round pick isn't even starting. He's the backup offensive tackle. That's how deep this team is. So that's what we really like about the Eagles. Their offense should rebound a little bit from a decline last year. They were very high in injuries last year. They're likely to be healthier this year. They have the depth in case the injuries come. Philadelphia should be really strong.
Cowboys love the soap opera, don't they?
Of course, they're the Cowboys. Why shouldn't they star? Why should Jerry not star in the soap opera? He's the star, right? So, Ezekiel
Maybe
Elliott,
one day he'll get to be president. Oh, no, forget that. No, we already tried that. Sorry.
Between Zeke Elliott and Melvin Gordon's holdouts, we're having a lot of interesting discussions about the value of running back. And I think that the Cowboys will find that as good as Ezekiel Elliott is, that the value of running backs is just not that high in the modern NFL. And that Tony Pollard can do a lot of what Ezekiel Elliott did for a lot less money.
Don't tell the New York Giants the running back.
Give Zeke?
Hey, don't tell the Giants running back's not important, right? They burnt the one on it, right?
Well, the Giants running back is great, but he's not important. They went 5-11. He was fabulous, right? I mean, look, Saquon Barkley is an excellent example of why running backs aren't that important.
That's why I brought him up.
That might be the best running back in the league, and they went 5-11.
Aaron, it's always great visiting with you. Tell me a bit about Football Outsiders. Give them the whole history and everything you're doing and how to find you if they just tuned us in.
Right. Like I said, the original football analytics site going back to 2003. We cover the NFL. We cover college football as well with content all year long. You can check out the book, Football Outsiders Almanac. You can check out our Kubiak fantasy football projection system, which is now a web application to help you in your draft with all the latest projections are all updated through preseason. You can buy that on our website. We've got charting data. We have weekly fantasy projections during the season for those of you who play DFS. All that stuff can be found at footballoutsiders.com.
All right. Well, I know Tanier calls himself an OG gangster and all that stuff. I don't know what your name is, but you're the Swiss Army knife for all things football and where we go for Football Outsiders. Innovative statistics, intelligent analysis, and a really cool piece on the players wanting an 18-game season and whether they should or shouldn't want that I saw this week. Hey, man, hope you have a great season. I mean, do you go to some games, or are you a guy that's watching on 12 channels in your man cave?
I usually attend, since I live in Boston, I attend the Patriots home games. It's good to get that view from above of, like, the defenses. I like to see the other teams that the Patriots are playing. I mean, obviously a lot of good teams come in here. I mean, also bad teams come in here because they're in the AFC East.
Well, the Jets come every year. The Bills come every year.
Right.
You get
to see the Steelers from above, get to see the Chiefs from above, so... I do go to a few games in person during the year, and I'll travel and go to 1 or 2 games in other cities during the year as well.
Well, you'll never have a stale crab cake in my town, man. So come on down here, and we'll see you soon. Have a great season.
I haven't been to Baltimore yet, so eventually I would love to go.
What?
I haven't been to the stadium yet.
Well, they play the Patriots. Come on down. It's like a primetime game, man. I'll set you up. Let's go. Come on. Get down here.
All right.
Let's do it, man. Let's go watch some football, man. I'm just hoping that game means, I'm the raving guy that's just like Make me 3-2 that makes me 4-2 that makes me 6-4. Like I just like a good season like we had last year, and then you take your chances with a home playoff game, right?
I cannot foresee a situation where the Ravens are like a 6-10 team that's out of it easily. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, but they're going to be in contention. It's going to be a year to pay attention to.
See, this is why we bring you on, Aaron, to perk us up Labor Day. Hey, thanks for coming on, man. Always a pleasure.
All right, thanks for having me.
You got it. Aaron Schatz joining us here. You can find him out on the Twitter thing at FO_A Schatz. That's SCHATZ, like the brewery in Milwaukee, I think. Auburn, Massachusetts. It's going to get me Googling Auburn, Massachusetts. Really cool picture of him on some late-night television promoting the Football Outsiders Almanac. You can find me in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world, including the beach on Labor Day weekend and a Baltimore Positive weekend. Full-on football assault next week as we go down to Miami. And we're not going for the oranges or the stone crabs. They're out of season. How do we keep getting games in Miami with stone crabs out of season? Ridiculous. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore sports and crabs in season. That's why I'm going to Costas and Al's.